Welcome into the Commanders Report live show here on a beautiful Thursday evening. Thank you to all the real ones showing up with us here at the beginning of today's show. Commanders mandatory minicamp wrapped up today. So our first segment today, we're going to be breaking down everything that went down at mandatory minicamp this week. My takeaways, winners and losers, the whole 9 yards. We'll be breaking it down. Then we'll get into the latest Commanders trade rumors. Clutch Points came out with an article of 3 trade targets for the Washington Commanders that I'll be reacting to. Then we'll get into my list of Commanders cut candidates after minicamp this week. Now, we now have a nice little break here before training camp, but now after we've gone through kind of the OTA portion of the offseason, which guys are in danger of being cut surprisingly from this Commanders roster? We'll get into that. And then we'll get into the Commanders Report live Q&A to finish up today's show. So right now, if you're right at the beginning of today's show, make sure you guys use hashtag Commanders or Super Chat down there in the live chat right now to get your question on the show. So the way it works is that, like, for example, you put down there in the live chat, hashtag Commanders. Jack, do you think Terry McLaurin will lead the Commanders in receiving yards this year? The reason why you got to put hashtag Commanders down there is because that's how producer Coop is going to see your question. If you don't put hashtag Commanders, it will not be on the mailbag. So if you want to get a question on today's Q&A segment, make sure you use hashtag Commanders. Or if you want to skip the line and guarantee your question gets on the show, you can super chat any amount. It could be a $1, $2 super chat. If you want to make sure your question gets on the show, you guys can get that done. And with that, let's bring on our producer today, Mr. Coop. How we doing, my friend? One day away from Friday here.
Yes, some call it Friday Eve.
Yeah.
We have a little chat sports outing planned after work today, so excited for that. Should be fun, yeah. Getting ready for the weekend, talk some football.
Hate to bring it up here, Coop, but those Dallas Mavericks, man, I've been cheering for them right there along with you. You actually went to the game last night, and they unfortunately couldn't find a way to get it done, even though Kristaps Porzingis was out. Luka fouls out. It was just there's a lot of slander going towards Luka Doncic's name, and you're not happy about it.
A lot of it. It's been very exhausting. I kind of just want the series to be over so we can move on with everything. But no, it's been a fun run, and I'm proud of the accomplishment of getting to the finals in the first place. So,
and I hate to break it to you, Coop. You're also a Dallas Cowboys fan.
I am.
We appreciate your help with the show here. But you know what? We got to beat up on another Dallas football team here, and that's the Dallas Cowboys Report.
Well, I'll say this. I am a Cowboys fan, but I know that they stink.
He's a very self-aware Cowboys fan. But today, we got to beat them in Super Chat revenue, guys, okay? The Cowboys Report last week on their live show, they made $85.98 in Super Chat and Venmo revenue. Our goal today is to beat that. Let's get to at least $100 in Super Chat and Venmo revenue. Coop doesn't think that we're going to be able to do it. I think we're going to be able to. Coop's been kind of down bad this week, and I hate to do it to you, Coop. We got to beat your boys up again. But make sure you guys get those Super Chats in so we can beat the Cowboys Report.
Shout out to Eugene and Jasmine down there in the chat. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and interacting with us.
All right, our Super Chat menu today. To help us beat the Cowboys Report, any Super Chat, you're going to get a shout-out. If you have a question, we'll put it on the mailbag. And then $10 Super Chats today. Every $10 that you put in, it's going to be one Bean-Boozled jelly bean. And if you guys don't know what the Bean-Boozled jelly beans are, they're disgusting jelly beans from Jelly Belly with flavors like stinky socks, barf, dirty dishwater, dead fish, booger, rotten egg, liver, and onions. Need I go on, all right? This is just terrible tasting jelly beans. If you want us to eat some today, $10 Super Chats. Every 10 that you spend, we have to do a bean. Then $20. Send in a $20 Super Chat. You get your name on the the Cowboys hat. We're trying to beat up on the Cowboys today, so if you want your name on the hat, we've already got some great names in here like IQ Barbecue, Tom Downey, Cameron. We got Marco Gorman, the real one. We got Earl Duncan. We got a bunch of great Commanders fans already on the hat.
You can put my name on it if you want.
Yeah, we can put your name on there. We can put Coop's name on there if you guys want as well. And then if you guys put in a $20 Super Chat, not only do you get your name on the hat, but Coop and I, we're going to have to be doing 2 Bean-Boozled jelly beans at the same time. So even if we have one good bean, the chances of getting a bad bean definitely go up. Now, if you guys, if you're generous enough here and you want to donate to the show, we really do prefer it if you guys use Venmo instead of Super Chat. And the reason why we prefer Venmo is because YouTube takes a portion of every Super Chat that we get. But with Venmo, we get to keep more of the proceeds. So if you want to help out the show, you want more of your donation dollars to go to making more Commanders content every single day for free here on YouTube, you can find me at Jack-Sperry on Venmo. You can also scan the QR code here on screen. Again, I'm at Jack-Sperry. Our goal today is to get to $100 in Super Chat and Venmo revenue today. We got the Bean-Boozled promotion, and I really do appreciate all of your guys' support, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do every day. Now, before we get into our first segment today, make sure you like the stream. We got over 45 people watching around the world right now, so type me in the chat for a shout out to start out today's show. We see Eugene down there. I see Jasmine. Eugene is getting his question in for the mailbag. Let's go. Eugene. Get those me's in the chat. And you know what, Coop? We're up at 46 people watching. Only 11 likes. We need to get this up to 20 likes before we get into our first segment here. I see Jimmy Orca? Hope I'm saying that right. My girlfriend Cassie Voth is in the chat. Everyone give it up for Cassie.
Shout out Cassie.
And she says hi to everybody.
Did you deliver her the bad news?
I did deliver her the bad news. Unfortunately, the company outing is just for company people only. So she wasn't too happy about that. And I don't blame her. Ice House is a great spot. So,
sorry, Cassie.
Cassie, it's actually Cassie's birthday on Saturday. So everybody give Cassie a happy birthday in the chat. All right.
Happy early birthday. Where are you guys going?
So actually, I have not told her yet. So I'm not going to reveal that secret.
You'll tell me off.
I'll tell you off screen, but I can tell you it's going to be a pretty magical night on Saturday. You can take that to the bank. So
Proposal?
we got. What's that? Nope. Jesus. Coop. Give it a rest over there. We got Jasmine in here. We got Jimmy. We got Cassie, who was at the pool earlier today. She says she's a burnt chicken nugget here in Dallas, Texas.
I want to go to the pool.
We got Eugene. We got Jasmine. We got a good crew of people here ready to get things going right here on the Commanders Report. So our first segment today is going to be mandatory minicamp recap for the Washington Commanders. Commanders trade rumors is going to be second up. Our third segment will be cut candidates for Washington, and then we'll finish things off with the Commanders Report live Q&A. So make sure you guys get your questions down there right now. #Commanders along with your question or Super Chat or Venmo to make sure you get on the show today. Be like Eugene, who uses #Commanders down there in the chat. So without further ado, let's get into our first segment right now. The latest mandatory minicamp news and rumors for your Washington Commanders. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry, and today it was the conclusion of Washington Commanders mandatory minicamp. So today, first up, we're going to talk about some things that Jaden Daniels, the new quarterback of the Commanders, and head coach Dan Quinn had to say in their respective press conferences this week that I think are of note. And then we'll get into my list of minicamp winners and losers here, breaking down my 6 winners from mandatory minicamp and then 4 players that I consider losers as we finish the OTA period here this offseason. Now, help us move up the ranks here in the Chat Sports Power Rankings here. The next kind of channel above us right now here at the Commanders Report is the Alabama Football Report, who currently has over 17,700 subscribers. We've been gaining ground on them over the last couple of weeks. We're up at 16,255. The higher we rise up the ranks here at Chat Sports, the more stuff we get to do, more videos, more live streams, more watch parties, more giveaways. So the higher we go, the more stuff that we can do here. So if you want daily and free Commanders content and you want to help us pass Alabama Football Report, make sure you click that subscribe button. And I got to say this right now, folks. If you're a new viewer and you're watching our video for the first time, or you're watching one of our videos for just the first couple of times, we're really relying on you guys, because most of the people that watch this show are already subscribed to the channel. So in order for us to catch up to Alabama Football Report, we need the new bodies to click that thumbs up or that subscribe button right now. We are counting on you, so make it happen right now. Click that subscribe button right now. Now, first up here, let's go over Jaden Daniels' comments from his press conference yesterday at mandatory minicamp. where he talked about a number of different topics. First, on his mentality heading into his rookie season, this is what he had to say. I would just say, as you rep more things, obviously you start getting a grasp of the playbook, but I still got a long way to go to still be where I want to be. I'm trying to be perfect. I'm trying to perfect it and trying to be a perfectionist as much as possible. I ain't a star quarterback yet. I got a long way to go. I'm a rookie. So I really do love this mentality from JD. He's a humble human being, but he's also extremely confident in himself. He's extremely hardworking, and he understands, and he has the right mentality here in terms of knowing that he's a rookie, that he has to play catch up with the rest of the National Football League. And in order for him to have success right away, he's going to have to put in those hours, and he's going to have to approach this situation with humility. Another quote that he had on his daily routine, which I thought was very intriguing, he says, I get here at like 5:45 a.m. I mean, I'm not even awake at that time, folks, just trying to prepare myself for the day. It's kind of just that routine that I had when I was in college, but now I'm in there actually walking through because I'm still learning the playbook and trying to grasp everything. And he even said that his new rookie teammate, Luke McCaffrey, is getting in at the same time that he is, 5:45 a.m. every single day in the Commanders facility. So that's obviously something you want to see from two players that you're really hoping are going to be cornerstones for your offense moving forward. Another quote here on Cliff Kingsbury's offense and how it's going so far. Jaden said, it's been great, just the offensive mind of his and the type of coach he is and how he can scheme things up. He has a very quarterback-friendly offense just for everybody in that room to go out there, to learn it, and compete at a high level. So listen, it definitely is good to hear that everything is going smoothly between new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury and new quarterback Jaden Daniels, that things are going well. You know, the install isn't going too fast for Jaden or anything of the like, and it definitely seems like Jaden likes what Cliff Kingsbury is going to be doing here, and I do think that the skill set that Jaden brings to the table is a good fit for what Cliff is going to want to do offensively here in Washington. So here's to hoping that these guys are a good pairing for this football team moving forward. So now we're on to head coach Dan Quinn here, who talked to the media to finish up mandatory minicamp. He actually talked to the media every single day this week, and he had some very interesting things to say about Jaden Daniels and the quarterback competition that's coming in training camp. So first, on Daniels himself, he says he's got the demeanor about the execution, about the confidence. He's got a swagger to him. He's got a very firm handle on the things that we are doing, but he also has the humility of a young player. That is something we talked about earlier. And then talking about the quarterback competition and whether or not Jaden already has the number one quarterback role on the team, he says no great declarations other than we're being true to who we are as competitors. There's no doubt Jaden's making unbelievable progress here and will have a very fun camp, but he's earned the opportunity to go out and compete. But listen, guys, I think we all know Jaden Daniels is probably going to start week one. The fact that it's already a competition, type environment here where Jaden's already getting first team reps, and most of them towards the end of mandatory minicamp here, he's looking fantastic out there. It definitely doesn't bode well for Marcus Mariota to win this job out of camp. Fully expect Jaden to be the starting quarterback when this team plays Tampa Bay in week one this year. So sound off for me down there in the comments section. What is the percent chance that Jaden Daniels is the week one starting quarterback? Scale it up for me on a scale of 0 to 100 for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time. But let me know what percent chance Jaden has to be the week one starter here in Washington. So now let's get into my list of winners and losers here. I've got 6 winners and 4 losers from this week's practices. And the first person we're going to talk about is the same person we've been talking about all video, and that's Jaden Daniels, okay? He has been unbelievable throughout the first, few weeks of the offseason program here. It's been just really a marvel to watch, and he has really set himself up for success as we head into training camp in a few weeks from now, because he's looking like he's executing things at a high level. He throws with beautiful touch and accuracy. The footwork is really clean as well. And another thing about Jaden Daniels is that you can tell on the field, on the practice field, that he looks more filled out than he was at LSU. He looks like he's bigger. His arms and his biceps are bigger than they were at LSU, where he was kind of slender, he was spindly, all these different things. But Jaden, you can definitely tell throughout the draft process, and now that he is a Washington Commander, has done everything in his power to really be the best player that he can be. And that, of course, includes a thicker frame. Then we get to Dyami Brown, one of the receivers that Jaden Daniels was throwing to this week, who really had the best connection down the field with Jaden, in my opinion. Now, Dyami is somebody that is going to benefit from an OTA, mandatory minicamp type environment because he is a smaller, faster, shiftier wide receiver. And, when you're not playing in pads, when you're not playing with the physical element of the game, then Dyami Brown is going to be somebody that is going to benefit from that because you can't, be physical at the catch point, all these different things. So Dyami is definitely somebody that benefits from this, environment at OTAs. But they're definitely developing a connection, and that's something that you want to see here, especially for Dyami Brown's purposes, because he's heading into a year where it's going to be really, really important for him moving forward and trying to be one of the top targets for Jaden Daniels heading into his first year in the league. Then we get to Quan Martin here, a defensive back that was taken in the second round last year, played a lot of nickel corner. When this Commanders defense was struggling last year and he didn't play well, he didn't help the problems at all. Now the Commanders seem to be moving him to safety instead of nickel corner because they just drafted Mike Sainristil, who will be playing there. But he had an unbelievable interception where he tipped the ball in the air and then he caught the ball behind his back. It was just an incredible thing to watch. Go to social media, watch that play because it's really a marvel to see. But Quan is definitely somebody that's taking that new safety role and running with it, and that's what you want to see right now. Another player that's been really impressive so far is Jamin Davis, who's being moved to edge rusher. Now, it's kind of like a hybrid edge rusher linebacker type role, kind of like that Micah Parsons role that we saw him play in Dallas in this defense ran by Dan Quinn over the last several years, but Jamin definitely has the body type and the physical skill set to play that kind of hybrid role, and he's certainly looking good right now, and he's drawing high praise from coaches. Then we get to Mike Sainristil, the nickel corner, second-round pick for the Commanders this year. He's been awesome. He's been as advertised. I can't wait to see him play. I think he's going to be one of the best rookie defenders in football this year, and he's probably going to be maybe the best overall corner in the Commanders' cornerback room this season, even in his first year. And then another rookie that's impressed me throughout training or throughout minicamp this week is Jordan McGee, the inside linebacker who was drafted on day 3 this year. He's got an excellent physical skill set. I don't think he's going to be ready to play day 1 in the National Football League, but he's taking pretty nicely to this new defense and, getting it acclimated to the NFL. I think he looks like a future starter for this defense. Now, make sure before we get into the losers on my list here, make sure you click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already, if you are a real one. And before I get into the losers here, I want to go over I think that this is absolutely fantastic. I saw somebody down there in the live chat asking about Jaden Daniels jerseys and when Fanatics is going to put it out there. Guess what? They're here. Go to chatsports.com/Daniels. I'll put that link in the comments and description of today's show. And the thing that really makes this awesome, guys, is that if you were planning on getting a Jaden Daniels Commanders jersey anyway, and you want to help out the channel, this is your opportunity to do so, because if you use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels, and you make a purchase, Fanatics is going to send us part of the proceeds to help us make more Commanders content for you guys every day for free. So if you're planning on getting a Daniels jersey, get it from our friends at Fanatics right now by using our link, chatsports.com/Daniels. So now we're on to the losers here for, mandatory minicamp. Now, I do want to have a little bit of a disclaimer here because just because you're on the losers list or just because I put a player on this list does not mean that I think they're a bad football player or that they're definitely going to get cut or anything of that like, okay? I'm just saying that, this probably wasn't the best week for them in terms of their positioning on the roster. But, hey, man, things can definitely turn around in training camp. Okay, first one, Emmanuel Forbes. And the reason why he's on my losers list is because, let's just face it. Heading into this offseason, we were hoping that Forbes was going to, put on weight just like Jaden Daniels has, and it just doesn't seem like he's done that. This picture has gone viral on social media where a high schooler kind of made him look like a high schooler at his own camp, right? And you look at the legs, and they're still super skinny. The arms are still super skinny. And, without the size and the strength, and it's really hard to play a physical brand of football. And if you can't play a physical brand of football on the outside against, bigger receivers like A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, can't keep up with those guys on a physical standpoint, you're just not going to be able to cover them. And it's just going to limit what you can do as a cornerback. So he still looks too thin to me. He still looks like that's going to be a big hindrance on his 2024 season. Hope I'm wrong. Hope he has a complete breakout season, and he's still very talented, can catch the football, great ball skills. He can track the football in the air. He's got good things about his game, but, that frame is definitely still in concern. Then we get to Marcus Mariota, and we talked about Jaden Daniels, how well he's playing in OTAs and through this mini camp here. And that just means bad things for Marcus Mariota. Like, if Jaden Daniels is playing well, there's pretty much nothing Mariota can do to keep the starting job long-term here in Washington. I mean, plain and simply, they invested that number 2 overall pick in Daniels, so if he's playing well, he's going to get the playing time, period, okay? And Mariota's that bridge-type guy, and I just think that he needs to get used to, sitting pine. I mean, we see him wearing that number 0. For me, that signifies the amount of games he's going to be starting for the Washington Commanders this year, okay? I don't think he's going to be playing much this year, barring a Jaden Daniels injury, and I think for week 1, he's going to start the year as the backup QB. Then we get to Johnny Newton, and, he's been on my losers list through, rookie minicamp and OTAs and now through minicamp here because he hasn't played, and he's been injured, and he's been recovering from that foot procedure. He's had 2 separate foot procedures on each of his feet this offseason, so 1 per foot. And, it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from that. Dan Quinn said that they're hoping they're going to get him back for training camp, and, I'm hoping that he's going to be ready to go by week 1 because he's a talented individual, and he's certainly somebody I'm going to be keeping my eye on once training camp begins. Then another guy that's been dealing with an injury here that hasn't been able to really participate is F.A. Obata. Now, the team brought Obata back in free agency this year, but with the way the defense is kind of constructed right now, I'm just not sure if Obata's going to have a spot on this roster heading into 2024. He's coming back from that leg injury that he suffered in 2023. And, you look at his situation and you look at, Jamin Davis moving to edge, and you still have Dorrance Armstrong, and they brought in Dante Fowler and Cleveland Ferrell, and, they're bringing in all these edge rushers. If F.A. Obata doesn't come back with a vengeance here after pretty much sitting the first portion of the offseason so far, I mean, he might be in danger of getting cut from this team moving forward. Now, let me know down there in the comments section who has the most pressure on them heading into training camp on this Commanders roster. Let me know a name down there in the comments section of who has a lot of pressure heading into camp. That'll be it for today's show, guys. I appreciate your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already for more Commanders news and rumors content all throughout the 2024 offseason. First cut out of the way here, Producer Coop. A little reminder here, coming up, we got our mailbag segment.
Yes, indeed.
So make sure you guys get your questions in there. Hashtag Commanders or Super Chat to get your question on the show. Really do appreciate you guys. Up next, Commanders trade rumors.
Juicy.
Clutch Points came out with an article of 3 of 3 Commanders trade targets to go after. So I'll be going over those, and I'll be reacting to them and giving my thoughts. But before we get into that, man, make sure you guys use hashtag Commanders or Super Chat to get on the show here for our mailbag segment. Really do appreciate all of the support that you guys give us. Now, let's get into our second segment of the day here, Producer Coop. Commanders, trade rumors. Can we actually make that logo bigger by any chance? Fair enough. Okay, let's get into this next segment right now. Commanders, trade rumors from Clutch Points. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry, and today I am reacting to an article from Clutch Points, which names 3 Commanders trade targets that they should go after before the start of training camp here in 2024. Before we get into it, we are in the middle of a like battle here with our friends, frenemies, I guess we can call them. Eagles Now by Chat Sports. We usually do it with the Cowboys, but the Eagles saw us beat the Cowboys earlier this week, and they said, you know what? We want to get in on this action. So yesterday's video, Eagles had 864 likes on their most recent video. We have to beat that today in order to win. If this isn't enough to make you click that thumbs up icon, here's what Jake Chipper, the producer of Eagles Now, had to say about the Commanders. He's actually produced here on the Commanders Report before. I literally laughed out loud when I saw that the Commanders were stupid enough to give us Cooper DeJean. Adam Peters is such an idiot. I can't wait for the Eagles defense to break Jaden Daniels twice this year. Fly, Eagles, fly. So you guys remember Jake Chipper? I'm sure some of you, he's been on the show before. You guys know he's got a big mouth. So let's shut it for him right now here, Producer Coop. Coop, you're a Cowboys fan, and that's kind of fraudulent in its own right, but the one thing that Commanders fans and Cowboys fans can come together on is that Eagles fans are the worst.
No one likes the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a trash city. They have a trash fan base, and they act like they've won 10 Super Bowls. You've won 1 Super Bowl in 50 years. You guys need to chill out and F the Philadelphia Eagles always. I freaking hate the Eagles, man. I'm done with them.
F the Eagles. Help us win right now. Click that thumbs up icon. All right, let's get into our first trade target from Clutch Points in this article here. And the first one is wide receiver from the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton. Now, this one is interesting to me here, Coop, because Courtland is a really good receiver. He'd bring some size to this wide receiver room that, we know the Commanders could certainly use that. Terry McLaurin is kind of the biggest receiver that's going to be a bona fide starter here. He's only 6 foot. And Courtland Sutton's one of the best, bigger contested ball winners in the league. This is what Enzo Floho had to say. He's from Clutch Points on Courtland Sutton. The Denver Broncos wide receiver Courtland Sutton may find himself with a new team this offseason. With Sutton and the Broncos unable to agree on a substantial contract extension, the talented receiver could be on the move. Sutton excels at making tough catches even when the throws are less than perfect. So listen, man, when it comes to Courtland Sutton, I don't think he's going to get traded. I don't think Broncos are looking to move him. And with Courtland showing up at mandatory minicamp there in Denver this week, as reported by James Palmer, Courtland definitely doesn't seem like, he's necessarily like demanding a trade out of there or anything like that. Did show up to mandatory minicamp, and even Ian Rappaport from NFL Network this week says he would be surprised if the Denver Broncos trade Courtland Sutton. So even though, for the right price, I would love to add a Courtland Sutton to this wide receiver room and give Jaden Daniels yet another weapon, especially in the red zone, in those contested catch situations. We know how much Jaden loves to throw those deep balls, but I just don't think it's a realistic possibility at this point. Now, shout out your guy down there in the comments section. Name a player that the Commanders should trade for. It could be anybody, all right? Now, try to keep it realistic. I don't want to see any Patrick Mahomeses down there in the chat. But let me know, who's a player that the Commanders could realistically trade for down there in the comments. Second trade target from Clutch Points in this article here is Tremaine Edmunds, the linebacker from the Chicago Bears. Kind of an interesting name that you don't hear thrown around trade rumors around the National Football League, but they listed him here, and this is what they had to say. Edmunds was expected to be a cornerstone of the Bears' defense. Now playing under defensive coordinator Eric Washington, Edmunds has familiarity with the system. However, his performance last year did not justify his $18 million salary. Edmunds' versatility and playmaking ability would be invaluable to the Commanders. They need a dynamic presence in their linebacking core. His quick diagnostic skills and sideline-to-sideline range would significantly enhance their defense. Now, here's the thing, man. The Commanders already made their investments at the inside linebacker position. They brought in both Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, and they're going to be playing Jeremy Chin in kind of like a rotational bandit-type role this year in their nickel and dime packages. So I think that they're probably pretty good. And, if one of these guys gets hurt, you do have Michael Walker and Jordan McGee, and then even Jamin Davis, who has played this position before in the Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera era for this team. Davis is moving over to edge rusher, and he's going to be rushing the passer more now. But if you need him to play inside linebacker in a pinch, you can absolutely do that. Tremaine Edmunds is extremely expensive, and he did not have a good year last year, especially in pass coverage, which is why I think there is a 0% chance that the Washington Commanders make a trade for Tremaine Edmunds. Sorry, Clutch Points. Now, coming up here, final trade target from Clutch Points here, and I think it's actually the most realistic of the bunch here. But before we get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics. Go to chatsports.com/Daniels to pick up a brand new Jaden Daniels Commanders jersey today. And if you've been planning on getting a Jaden Daniels jersey and you want to help out our channel, this is the perfect opportunity for you to kill two birds with one stone. Because if you use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels, I'll put that link in the comments and description of today's show, and you make a purchase, Fanatics is going to send us part of the proceeds. So I really do appreciate your support. If you want to get a brand new Jaden Daniels jersey and you want to help the Commanders support today, go to chatsports.com/Daniels. Now let's get to the final trade target here from this article, and it's cornerback Caleb Evans, currently with the Minnesota Vikings. This is what Floho had to say about Evans to Washington. So, Evans' physical attributes and potential make him an intriguing prospect. However, with Shaq Griffin joining the Vikings, Evans might find himself lower on the depth chart. Given the Vikings' limited draft capital, trading Evans could help them recoup some much-needed picks. For the Commanders, Evans' arrival would inject youth and dynamism. There we go. We got a nice word there from Clutch Points into the secondary. His capability to handle both man and zone coverage effectively would offer greater flexibility to the defensive scheme. This could be pivotal in creating turnovers and shifting game momentum. So listen, man, I think that this is probably the best idea that Clutch Points came up with, but even then, I'm not too sure if this is something that is actually realistically has a chance to happen. Because, I'm not sure if the Commanders or the Vikings really feel incentivized to get a deal done here. Now, the thing about Evans that does intrigue me here is that his physical profile is legit. He's got long arms, he's got a good size, and he's got good enough speed. 4.46 at his height and weight there, almost 200 pounds. And with his long arms, I do think that he'd be a good scheme fit here with the Washington Commanders, all right? But I think probably both teams would say no to a potential trade here. And the reason why the Vikings would say no is because they have pretty much no cornerback depth. I mean, Andrew Booth Jr. deserves to be working in like a toll booth, let alone, being Andrew Booth. He stinks. And then, they don't have really anybody else. They have Byron Murphy who plays in the slot, and he's fine. And then you get Shaq Griffin this offseason, and he's just okay as well. So I think that Evans, who is fast, who is big, I think he is a good fit for Brian Flores' system. They're in Minnesota. I think they probably need him to start this year because I'm just not sure who else they have outside of a couple rookies here that they got in the draft, like Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon. And then the reason why I think that Washington probably says no is because he would be yet another unproven entity in this cornerback room. Right now, you got both Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes, two younger, unproven, maybe higher potential type guys in that room, but you need somebody that I think is a bit more experienced and somebody that's a bit more established. And I think instead of trading and giving away a draft pick for a Caleb Evans, just go to free agency and sign Stephon Gilmore. You don't have to give up a draft pick to get him. You might have to pay him a little bit more, but you probably only have to give him a 1-year contract. He's been in this defense before. He'd be an excellent mentor to the younger guys in that room, and he'd immediately be your number one corner. I mean, this is just a no-brainer move to me. If I'm Adam Peters, the GM, the only thing that could be preventing the Commanders of making this move, in my opinion, is if Stephon Gilmore is saying, I'm not playing for a rebuilding team like the Commanders, and that's a very good possibility, okay? Because he is older, he might be trying to go play for a competitor, and he might feel like the Commanders aren't there yet. But if he is open to playing for Washington this year, there's no reason why the Commanders shouldn't bring him in for this season. Now let me know down there in the comments section, would you sign Stephon Gilmore? Ignore the double O's there. Would you sign Stephon Gilmore? F. Coop in the chat. Yes or no? Let me know. Would you sign Stephon Gilmore, the former All-Pro corner, to join the Washington Commanders? Thank you guys so much for your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button right now because we got more premium Commanders coverage coming your way all throughout the 2024 offseason right here on the channel. 2 more segments to go here on the show here, Coop. What's up?
Here's my question.
Uh-huh.
If you're the Commanders, it makes no sense to not sign Stephon Gilmore. You have his defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. He immediately becomes your number one corner. He immediately becomes the veteran on the defense. And you could learn so much from him. Are you going to make the playoffs because of Gilmore? Maybe not. But he's a culture setter. Yeah,
first of all, your football team gets better and more competitive with him in the building. And then second of all, the future looks better too because you're telling me Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St-Juste can't learn a thing or two from a former defensive player of the year? And by the way, it's not like he was bad last year.
No, he was a decent CB2.
He was arguably their number one cover corner there in Dallas. He didn't have as much interceptions as Bland, but I mean, you looked at who the Cowboys put on the opposing team's
Gilmore.
number one receiver. It was Gilmore on the opposing number one receiver every week, including A.J. Brown, and he shut down A.J. Brown twice. All right? And right now, who do the Commanders have that can bring down A.J. Brown? Nobody.
Benjamin St-Juste?
I mean, Benjamin has the best shot,
but he ain't bringing down A.J. Brown.
But he's slow. Like, he's got long arms, and he's physical, and he's big, but he's not fast.
One thing on Deron Bland, he had a bunch of interceptions. He did not cover well.
No, he did not.
So they made Gilmore, he was the responsible guy for all the other team's number one receivers, basically.
And he did a good job.
He did a good job.
And people forget about how good of a job he did both in Indy and Carolina the 2 years before, too.
And he was thrusted into that role because Trayvon Diggs tore his ACL. So he wasn't expected to play the CB1 role, but he stepped into it and did a good job. They should sign him right now.
I mean, if he's willing to come to Washington and he says, sign me up, sign him up. The only thing that I could think of that would make them pause on him and be like, nah, we're going to go with Emmanuel Forbes, who literally has pretzel legs, over Stephon Gilmore, as if Gilmore just says, I don't want to go there. Which is, I'm not sure if I buy that, Coop, because,
Joe loves Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn, his former defensive coordinator, is the head coach here. And then you got Joe Witt Jr., his former secondaries coach, is the DC. There's no reason. And plus, he'd be a number one corner here. I don't see many reasons other than the Commanders are a rebuilding team for Gilmore to say no to coming here. I honestly think this is Adam Peters just shoving his head up his ass right now and just thinking Emmanuel Forbes and Michael Davis is going to be good enough.
Well, I'll say this.
Because it's not.
Do you think that the longer he goes unsigned, the better chance the Commanders have at getting him?
Yeah.
Probably, right?
Because if his objection is, I don't want to play for a non-competing team.
But what if nobody signs him?
If no competing teams want him, then it's like, well, what are your options here,
Exactly.
Stephon? Where else are you going to be a number one corner in the National Football League this year? Probably nowhere else. All right, so right now, guys, I'm a little disappointed because we're trying to beat the Cowboys report here in total Super Chat / Venmo revenue today, and we still haven't gotten our first Super Chat. Who is going to...
What the hell?
Who's going to pop the cherry here? Who's going to get us going?
What do you mean by that?
First one to get through.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Very nice.
Very nice.
Here's our Super Chat menu if you haven't seen it already. Any Super Chat, you're going to get on the show. We'll give you some love. We'll put you on the mailbag, all that great stuff. We also have these Bean-Boozled jelly beans. Terrible tasting jelly beans. Every 10 that we get, we'll do a bean for you guys. $20, you get your name on the F the Cowboys hat. We're trying to beat the Cowboys today, so help us beat them. And then every 20, not only do you get your name on the hat, but we also have to do 2 beans at the same time, which pretty much is a 100% chance at least one of them is going to be a bad-tasting jelly bean. So get those Super Chats in. Let's beat the Cowboys today. We don't want to finish here with a goose egg. Let's get it going.
And also, make sure you use #Commanders or Super Chat. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we will get into our mailbag. So if you have any question about the Commanders, please go ahead and get that in the chat right now.
It looks like we still have plenty of room
left
on our mailbag here. So if you got a question, make sure you use #Commanders, and we'll get your question on the show. Okay, before we get into the mailbag, we got one more regular segment here. I got my list of 8 Commanders cut candidates that could be surprises heading into training camp.
Some interesting names on here.
Pretty interesting stuff here. So let's get into it right now. My list of cut candidates for the Washington Commanders. Commanders training camp is now right around the corner now that mandatory minicamp is finished. So today, I'm going to be going over 8 potential surprise cut candidates for the Washington Commanders, guys that I think most Commanders fans probably think are going to make the team. And, I'm sure some of the names on today's list would probably make the team. But here are some names that could potentially be surprise cuts after training camp for the Commanders after what we've seen through OTAs to this point. Now, let me know, before we get into today's show, name a player that you think could surprisingly be cut by the Washington Commanders this year. Offense, defense, special teams, who do you think could get cut that many people think is going to make this team? Let me know down there in the comments section what you have to say. Then we get to Armani Rogers here. I'm going to start with this one because this is the one that I think, Armani is a really talented player, and he could be absolutely even the number 2 tight end for this team this year. He is that good as a player. But he's coming off multiple seasons with injuries, and I think there's a wide range of outcomes. Okay, because the tight end room here in Washington really isn't all that bad in terms of talent. You do have Zach Ertz, who I do think is a declining talent. Ben Sinnott, who is probably not all the way cooked yet. I think he needs a year to develop under Zach Ertz. John Bates is more of a reliable kind of blocking tight end. And then you get kind of that hodgepodge of 3 tight ends there with Armani Rogers and Cole Turner. And Yankoff, he's an undrafted free agent, probably going to get cut. But between Rogers and Turner, both of them are pretty darn good players, but Turner's been more reliably on the field. And if Rogers, those injuries have really taken a toll on him, it's not impossible that he underperforms in camp and he ends up getting cut. Then we get to Chris Paul here, who is a starting guard for this team last year. I remember last year when I was warning people about Chris Paul, saying, what is Ron Rivera thinking starting this guy? And they're like, oh, well, if he's starting this year, there must be something they're seeing that you're not, Jack. Guess what? He had a 38.8 Pro Football Focus grade last year, which is about as bad as you can have. 77th among 79 interior offensive linemen. He was awful, and now the Commanders have brought in help on the interior of the offensive line. They've brought in Tyler Badass. They have brought in Michael Dieter. Okay, they have brought in these players that, have played in the league and have played better than Chris Paul. Okay, so right now the team actually lists Paul as an offensive tackle, so they're going to try to probably move him around a little bit, see if there's anything that he can do on this offensive line. But if he fails at tackle and he continues to fail on the interior, a former starting offensive lineman for this team last year is going to get cut. Then we get to Ramiz Ahmed, the kicker that this team brought in to replace Brandon McManus. And listen, Ramiz has got a good leg, okay? He had a 61-yard field goal in the USFL 2 seasons ago. He had a pretty decent season this year in the UFL, but the Commanders are bringing in kicker competition, all right? They brought in Jake Bates, who was the #1 kicker in the UFL, in for a visit this week. They had a number of kickers come in during mandatory minicamp. Seems like neither of those guys are going to really stick. So it looks like it's going to be Ramiz Ahmed, and if they can land Jake Bates, that's who they're going to want to bring in. I actually think in that competition, Bates probably wins it, because Bates hit a 64-yard field goal in the UFL this spring. And Ahmed, he's been a kicker in one NFL game for the Green Bay Packers, but he wasn't able to keep a job even in the UFL this year. So I think Jake Bates is the guy that the Commanders want, and if they get him, I think he's probably going to be the week 1 starting kicker for this team. Now predict it for me down there in the comments. Will Ramiz Ahmed be the Commanders' starting kicker this year? Give me a yes or a no for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no. Another player that I think could get surprisingly cut is Efe Obada. And he's coming off a big leg injury. He has not been able to participate in the voluntary and even mandatory portions of OTAs this year. And, with them bringing in Cleveland Ferrell, and them bringing in Dante Fowler Jr., and them bringing in Dorrance Armstrong, and moving Jamin Davis over to the edge. And, of course, you still have KJ Henry, who we'll talk about in a little bit here, actually. When it comes to Obada, if he comes back off that leg injury and he doesn't look good, there's a chance, at least, that he could get cut surprisingly. Now, I think many Commanders fans expect him to be a backup on this team this year and on this defense, and he certainly could. Okay, but he's going to have to show up at camp, and he's going to have to be a pretty decent player. If he doesn't, I'm not sure if there's going to be a ton of room for him on this defensive line. Then we get to KJ Henry, who was a mid-round draft pick last year for the Commanders. He had an opportunity to really get full-time starting reps after they traded Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and he didn't play well, guys. He really didn't. Wasn't really somebody that put a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, even with a lot of one-on-one opportunities. And if he has a lackluster camp, just like Efe Obada here, I do think Henry, is somebody that is going to be on the fringe of this roster for sure. Hopefully he continues to develop here, and he's somebody that can be a contributor for this team moving forward. But I'm definitely skeptical at this point, given what we saw from him last year. Then we get to Ricky Stromberg, another player taken last year by Ron Rivera in this former regime that just didn't really seem to work out. As a day 2 draft pick here, he came in and he was awful. All right, a 44.5 Pro Football Focus grade. Not as bad as Chris Paul, I'll give him that. But, that's not saying much, man. And, he's somebody that, heading into year 2, you're hoping develops. But, this regime made a point to go out and get Tyler Badass, to go out and get Nick Allegretti. And, and to go out and get Michael Dieter, who I think is better than Ricky Stromberg. So I do think Ricky needs to really turn it up here during training camp, and it's going to be a big year for him. Then we get to Braden Daniels here, who can play guard, he can play tackle, but, maybe he's just an athletic freak that doesn't really have a defined skill set. He missed his entire rookie season with an injury. He's coming in this year. Is he going to be able to find a home? Now, he's got the physical, skill set to find a home somewhere on this offensive line. But he's very raw. He was raw coming out of school last year, and he didn't have that crucial rookie year of development. So without that development, how does he look this year? If he doesn't look good, I do think that there is a decent chance that he doesn't make the roster this year. Then Dax Milne, I think there's a number of receivers that I could have put on this list here, but Milne is somebody that's been on this roster. He's played a relatively Maybe not significant, but he's had a role on this team. He's been a special teams contributor. But with all the talent that they have at the wide receiver position now, they brought in Luke McCaffrey, they brought in Olamide Zaccheaus, they brought back Jamison Crowder, who is a really good punt returner. I mean, I'm just not sure if Milne has a role to fill here on this team anymore. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Obviously he had that great season with Zach Wilson there at BYU. He was his number one target, but since entering the National Football League, he hasn't really been much. I think Jamison Crowder's a better punt returner. So I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Milne ends up getting the boot. Now, that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report. If you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, I greatly appreciate all your support, guys. Make sure you type those real ones down there in the chat in all caps. If you made it to the end, to identify yourselves, I want to see who all my real ones are down there in the comments. All right, so that is our third segment. One more to go here. Still need more questions, if I'm not mistaken here, Coop.
Yep, use hashtag Commanders or Super Chat. Now, I do want to ask you this. Bradley Campbell in the chat. Shout out, Bradley. What about De'Ami Brown as the surprise cut candidate?
So he's actually had a really good, OTA kind of phase here.
And him and Daniels, you said, have been developing a little connection there?
Yeah, yesterday's practice, Brown caught multiple downfield throws from Jaden Daniels.
That's good.
You can definitely see that connection growing. Now, I said in that video as well, Coop, you got to be wary of these smaller, shiftier, speedy receivers because they have all the advantage in shorts. Because you can't touch.
Oh, of course,
you can't touch them. And, if you can't touch, a shifty type receiver there that's a little bit smaller, it definitely gives them an advantage. But if you have pads on, you can be more physical, all these different things, that advantage goes away. So we're going to have to see how De'Ami plays in training camp. And if he doesn't play well in training camp, he could get cut. I could have easily added him in this list, but I think Dax Milne is probably more likely to get cut. And I think De'Ami has a pretty decent chance to make this team because he's got the skill set that works with Jaden Daniels, right? The kind of like the deep threat type, speedy receiver. I still believe in De'Ami Brown as like a good, role player on an NFL offense, especially this offense. Where they're going to want to throw those slot fades and they're going to want to, get the ball in these speedy receivers' hands. So I think that'd be good. JG says, what would be a surprise about Paul? It would just be a bit of a surprise to see somebody go from, bona fide starting left guard to straight up cut in one season. And I do think that, because he has name recognition, people kind of expect him to make the team. But I think when you really look into it, and if you're a real one like JG, you probably know that Chris Paul probably won't make this team this year. But I appreciate you, JG. I see you got the question down there.
I knew the Commanders' offensive line was bad. I didn't know their PFF grades were that bad.
Chris Paul,
Jesus Lord.
Dude, a 38.8, you pretty much have to fall down.
Is that worse than Evan Neal's?
Let me check real quick.
I think Evan Neal's might have been better.
And by the way, you know what the common denominator here is? Bobby Johnson.
Oh, boy.
Bobby Johnson, who coached Evan Neal, who was a top 5 pick to a 39.8 Pro Football Focus grade. So Chris Paul had a worse PFF grade than Evan Neal, who was the worst tackle in football last year. God, he stinks.
Not good, brother.
He is so bad. But hopefully he plays better at tackle. But, very rarely do people move from guard to tackle, and they're better.
But I do think they made some decent moves along the offensive line this offseason. I'm not saying they're going to be a great offensive line by any means, but I do think they'll be better.
What was their best move?
Biotish, probably?
Biotish.
He's good.
He's like middle of the pack.
Which is better than what they had.
Fair enough, man. I'm looking up his Pro Football Focus grade. And by the way, Pro Football Focus grades aren't gospel. We all know that.
But for offensive line, they're a pretty good indicator.
Biotish was 14th last year, so he's not bad, right? And Allegretti, here are my concerns. Cornelius Lucas
stinks.
Kind of stinks, all right? He's been a career swing tackle. I don't like that. Nick Allegretti, who they brought in to be the starting left guard, has never been a full-time starter left guard. Tell me if you've heard that one before, Chris Paul fans. And then we get Sam Cosmi, who's fantastic.
He's good.
Love him. And then you get Andrew Wiley, who gave up 9 sacks last year, still as your starting right tackle, and he's a year older. All I got to say is Jaden Daniels better, be moving. And, it just scares the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
And I hope that they do fine. I hope Lucas is serviceable. I hope Allegretti's a good starter like so many Commanders fans think he's going to be.
Just because
I hope Wiley bounces back after 2 bad seasons.
Just because he was on the Super Bowl winning team doesn't mean that he's going to be a great offensive lineman for the Commanders. Now that helps with the pedigree and just knowing how to win, but
and he played pretty good.
Played all right.
He played pretty good.
Now, is he fully recovered from his injury?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a UCL tear in the Super Bowl,
he played.
And he played, and they won. So I love the mentality of the 2 guys they brought in.
For sure.
Allegretti and Biotish both have played with great intensity and motor and all that great stuff. But are they going to be able to hold up? And that's going to be the big question. The tackles is really where I'm at. I'm really worried about the tackles though.
Yeah.
Because Lucas.
Now, I don't want to do this, but do you move Cosme out to tackle?
I don't want to.
He's your best lineman.
Yeah, I don't want to do that either. If you're going to give him an extension and you're going to pay him a lot of money, it might make sense.
Might as well.
But the question is, who replaces Cosme at guard then? Do you move Wiley in there?
Chris Paul.
Do you put Brandon Coleman in there? I don't think Coleman's going to be ready to play this year. I just don't. His foot speed is atrocious.
It's bad.
He was arguably the worst tackle at the Senior Bowl this year, and the Commanders took him in the 3rd round.
We need to get to
there was guys that went 6th, 7th round or undrafted that had better weeks in the one-on-ones than Brandon Coleman, and we took him in the 3rd round.
What a joke.
At least that's in my opinion. He tested really well.
Yeah.
And 2 seasons ago, before he had his injury, he actually played really well with TCU. But then his final season at TCU, I mean, let's put it this way. He had a lower Pro Football Focus grade in college than Cornelius Lucas last year in the pros. His Pro Football Focus grade last year was in the 50s, and that is terrible, and that was in the Big 12.
Not great, Bob.
Not great from Brandon Coleman.
All right, we have enough questions.
All right, we got enough questions now. Let's get into it, man. I feel like I say it every week. I pray to God that this offensive line proves me wrong. But on paper, this group stinks. And then when you interject a terrible offensive line coach like Bobby Johnson, that even makes it worse.
And it's not good for a rookie quarterback.
And
man.
you got a rookie quarterback in there.
Yikes.
Oh, man, I really hope I'm wrong, guys. I really, really hope I do. I am. Okay, let's get into this mailbag here. Make sure you guys keep getting those questions in. Even when I'm answering questions here, you guys can still put #Commanders in the chat. Coop will get those questions and put them on the show. So let's get it in right now. The weekly Commanders Report mailbag is coming at you right now. Today on the Commanders Report mailbag, I'm answering your questions on the burgundy and gold. Can't wait to see what you guys got for me. Now that mandatory minicamp has come and gone and the dog days of summer are finally here, unfortunately, for the NFL season. So before we get into it here, we are the most interactive Commanders fan community here on YouTube, okay? We have these weekly live shows here where we answer your questions on these mailbags. I really do appreciate everybody that shows up every single week. Make sure you click that subscribe button and join us 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single week where we have these live shows and we have a good time talking Commanders football. Okay, now let's get into this first question here. Coming to us from Eugene, says, are there any undrafted free agents who impressed you during minicamp and could potentially make the final roster? Not really, honestly. I like Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, the wide receiver from Georgia. I think he's really interesting. But I'm just not sure if there's any room for him in the wide receiver room this year. And that's unfortunate because I think that he's made some nice catches and he's made some splashes, but he's going to have to really make an impact in the preseason and in camp to justify keeping him on the final roster. So I'll say keep your eye on him. You know, Owens, the safety that they brought in, is interesting too. Maybe a special teams role for him. So I guess we'll see what happens here. But at the end of the day, they're undrafted free agents for a reason. Wouldn't really expect many to be big contributors. Then we got one from JG. What's up, JG? Says, who do you think will have a better defensive year, Mike Sainristil or Quan Martin? Quan Martin's looked really good in OTAs and in the mandatory minicamp, but Sainristil's looked really good too. I'm going to go with Sainristil because I think he's going to be on the field more. When the Commanders are in their base formation, I do think Jeremy Chin will play strong safety and Martin will be out. But Sainristil is definitely somebody that I'm interested in here. I think he's going to be excellent as a slot corner right away. If the outside cornerback position is bad enough, they might even try Sainristil on the outside, which I wouldn't. I think he'd be much better in the slot, but I guess you can try him out there. But I think Sainristil will probably make the bigger impact this year. Then we go on from Ron Rivera Era. Says, with Amari Cooper sitting out Browns OTAs and mandatory minicamp, any shot the Commanders could trade for him? I would say it's highly doubtful. Our Browns host, Matthew Peterson, says that they're probably going to get a deal done before training camp. And even if they don't and they do trade him, I'm not even sure if Washington's going to want to go out and get him because he's going to cost a high draft pick because he's one of the best receivers in the game. And then also you're going to have to pay him a brand new contract. That's the reason why he's sitting out mandatory minicamp for the Browns this week because he wants a new deal. And he probably wants like $30 million a year because he is that good. So I don't think the Commanders are going to be willing to pay that. But let me know, would you trade a second-round pick and then pay Amari Cooper $30 million a year? Let me know. Type A if you'd accept that trade or type D if you would decline. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube is going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me an A or a D down there in the comments. Let me on from Jasmine Gray. It says, who are going to start offensive tackle? My best guess at this point is Cornelius Lucas at left tackle and then Andrew Wiley at right tackle. They brought back Cornelius in free agency this year. They obviously did that for a reason. I don't think Brandon Coleman is going to be ready to play year one. He was pretty darn bad last year, and he was bad at the Senior Bowl this year, so I think he's going to need at least a year of development before he's ready. Might end up being a guard. And then Andrew Wiley, you're paying him too much money to sit his ass on the bench, all right? He gave up 9 sacks last year. He was not good. They should have replaced him with somebody this year. But at the end of the day here, man, it's not the best tackle duo in the world, but I do think it's what the Commanders have. Then we got one from Kurt Cobang. I like that name, Kurt. He says, do you think Quan Martin plays a major role on defense out of the gate? Depends what you mean by major. I think that he's going to be more of a rotational safety. I think Derek Forrest will be the starting free safety. He'll be out there on every play. Jeremy Chin is going to be an every down player. He's going to be like playing strong safety, box safety in your base formations with 2 safeties. And then when you go to your 3 safety bandit package, I think that's when Quan Martin comes in to play strong safety. And Jeremy Chin is playing hybrid linebacker because he's bigger. He's known more as like a box safety, and he's a really good hybrid linebacker. So I think that Quan is going to have a role on this defense. I think he's going to play it extremely well. But is he going to be an every down starter? I don't know. Unless they move Mike Sainristil out to outside corner, I don't really see him on the field every single snap. Now, make sure you guys click that subscribe button right now if you haven't already for daily Commanders news and rumors videos. We have breaking news coverage every time the Commanders make a move. If they sign Stephon Gilmore or something, or David Bakhtiari or something like that, we'll have a breaking news video for you guys here on the channel. Also, weekly live shows every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And oh yeah, it's all 100% free. So thank you guys so much for all of your support. And if you're new here, make sure you click that subscribe button to never miss any of our videos. Then we got one from Jeff A. Yoda, who says, why is Stephon Gilmore not on this team? The best answer I can give you there, because it just makes too much sense for the Commanders to want him, right? He'd be the number 1 corner on this team. He'd be an excellent mentor to the young guys in the room. He's played in this defense, just last year, and he was their number 1 corner on a really good playoff team in the Dallas Cowboys. There's no reason why the Commanders wouldn't want him. But maybe Stephon Gilmore doesn't want to play for a rebuilding team. Maybe that's it. Maybe the Commanders didn't offer him enough money. I mean, those are really the only 2 things that it could be at this point, other than, Adam Peters just shoving his head up as where and just kind of ignoring, a pretty obvious answer at the cornerback position in free agency. Then we go on from Jake Clowney. He says, will Jamin Davis have over or under 9.5 sacks this year? I want to say over for sure, man. I think Jamin is going to be moving into kind of like that Micah Parsons role in this defensive scheme. Now, nobody on the planet Earth is the physical specimen that is Micah Parsons, okay? But Jamin is pretty darn close. All right, he's a little bit lighter, but he's faster in the 10-yard split. And, he's very explosive, and he's a great pass rusher. He's always has been. He's always been a great blitzer, even when he's played inside linebacker. And now he's getting the pretty much pass rush full time, and he's still going to be able to go out in coverage at times. He's going to be really good in that role. I think that in this system, that's going to create a lot of opportunities for him, one-on-one opportunities. I think that he absolutely could get up to double-digit sacks this year. Now, let me know down there in the comments section, over or under 9.5 sacks for Jamin Davis this year. Type O if you think over, or type U if you think under. We got one from Derek Perry. What's up, Derek? Says that picture of Forbes is a CGI. He's not that small. He's small. There are multiple photos from the Commanders team, not just, social media, from the Commanders team with him in full uniform at practice, standing like Benjamin St. Just, and he looks tiny. All right, and the Photoshop one is the one with the pretzel legs. That's not the Photoshopped one. He is that skinny. He is like 170 pounds. And listen, Derek, I want Emmanuel Forbes to be really good. I do. I was relatively high on him coming out of school. I would have rather have taken Christian Gonzalez because he didn't have the size concerns. But Forbes, he's got great ball skills. There's a reason why he had all those pick sixes at Mississippi State. He's aggressive. From a play style perspective, he fits this defensive scheme. But I do think because of that lack of size and strength, it limits the amount of type of receivers he can line up against. So he can't be a true number one until he puts on that weight. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but I'm definitely concerned about Forbes' weight at this point. Then we got one from Paulie. Says, is there any shot CeeDee Lamb sits out the season for the Cowboys if he doesn't get the contract he wants? Is it impossible? No. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he's still young. For me, he was the offensive player of the year, and that pains me to say it because I freaking hate the Cowboys, but he was awesome last year. I'd say it's greatly unlikely, man. I think that he's going to get a contract. I don't know if he's going to get up to where Justin Jefferson got at $35 million, but I have a pretty good feeling he's going to get up to at least $32.5. I think they'll get a deal done, and no matter what, I think he will be wearing a Commanders or a Cowboys uniform this year. So predict it for me down there in the comments. Will the Cowboys win the division again this year? Give me a yes or a no. Let me know down there in the comments section. Keep in mind, how long has it been, Coop, since 2004, since there's been a repeat champion in this division? So I think Eagles fans are kind of chomping at the bit at that opportunity because the Commanders are still rebuilding and the Giants suck. So I think the Eagles are like, it's our year, but I guess we'll see. Let me know. Cowboys winning the division, yes or no? I'm going to say no to this. I think that Mike Zimmer defense is going to disappoint. All right, give me a subscribe right now if you haven't already, guys. Really do appreciate your support. We got more Commanders content coming your way here all throughout the offseason. Bunch of fun videos coming your way. So if you want the most latest and up-to-date premium Commanders content here on YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. All right, appreciate everybody that put in questions, man.
I like the over for this.
I kind of like the over too, man. I kind of like it. It's kind of a situation here where I think Jamin, he came into the league as a linebacker, and he's always had the skill set of somebody that could play like a dominant, like outside linebacker.
Has he played it out of necessity?
No.
Okay, so they're just moving him because...
They're moving him because this is probably where so in this defense, you kind of need like a hybrid outside linebacker type.
So they want him playing the Micah Parsons role.
Absolutely. And I actually at first thought they would put Frankie Louvu in this role, but Jamin is bigger than Frankie. And when I think about it, it actually makes more sense for Jamin to play this role because he is still extremely athletic. He's bigger than Frankie. He's got a faster 10-yard split than Micah Parsons, so his get-off is unbelievable. And, he's got the strength and physicality, and he's gotten like 5 sacks as an inside linebacker as a blitzer alone. Like, he can put up production as a blitzer. And because he has experience as an inside linebacker, he's going to be one of the better pass-defending outside linebacker-type rushers in the league when they decide to, put him out in coverage. So he's going to be that player that opposing offenses are going to have to know where he's on the field at all times. And that's going to create a lot of chaos for opposing quarterbacks. And we know how much Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. are going to want to move fronts around and move players around and create these pressure packages. It's going to be a lot of fun schematically on defense for the Commanders this year and moving forward, and I can't wait to see it unfold. I think it's going to take a year before this defense really starts to, click and get going and really become like one of the top 5, top 10 defenses in football. But I have all the confidence in the world that they're eventually going to get there, and Jamin Davis could be a cornerstone piece of that project.
There you go.
All right, man. That's going to be it for today's show. Appreciate everybody.
Thank y'all.
That made it to the end of today's show, that watched all the way to the end. We'll catch you guys next week for next week's edition of the Commanders Report.